Welcome into the Implementing OSPF lab. In this lab, we will take a simple network, in fact, this network, and we will implement OSPF from one end of the network to the other. We'll show you the various ways you can specify which networks and which interfaces are used in OSPF, and we'll verify that OSPF functions the way we expect it to using the show commands. Now, this particular GNS3 topology is available as part of the work files for this course. I have built this particular lab around the Cisco 3640 router platform, and that's the iOS that I'm using, although it will work on any router that includes the OSPF feature set. So let's dive right in. First off, let's go to the core here and open up the console for the core router. And just to prove there's nothing up my sleeve, that I haven't done all the work beforehand and I'm just kind of going through the motions, I'll do show IP route. You'll notice that all I know about are my connected routes, that 10.0.0.0 network that's subnetted off into a class C, a /24, and the 192.168.1 network, which is used on these point-to-point serial links between core and east and west. You'll notice that I don't know about any of the networks behind east or west or behind internet, sales, development. I don't know about any of these other networks, which happen to be on loopback interfaces, but they're networks nonetheless. So first, we'll examine the OSPF commands and get this left-hand side of the network working with OSPF between core and east and west. Then we'll move over to this Ethernet segment that would technically be in our core network, on our data center, or some other centralized location. Now, at its very base, the commands to implement OSPF on this router are pretty simple. Go into config mode, you do router OSPF, and you follow it with a process ID. Now, this process ID does not have to match on all of the routers in the OSPF domain. However, for ease of troubleshooting and ease of configuration, most of the time you'll want this ID to match. Now, since you can specify a process ID anywhere between 1 and 65.535, it is technically possible to run multiple OSPF processes on the same router. Now, why you'd want to do that is honestly a little bit beyond the IC&D1 course, but you would use it for route redistribution or multi-tenancy, or connecting multiple networks together that might have the same routes inside them. For the purposes of this lab, everything will fall under router OSPF process 10. So once you go into router OSPF mode, you're now presented with the config router prompt. Once you're in config router, you'll notice that you have a completely different set of configuration commands than you did just out in the standard configuration prompts. Most of these are pretty advanced commands, and you won't use them at the IC&D or the CCNA level. You'll have to get to the CCNP and beyond before you use most, or really more than, the network command, which is what we'll cover here in this particular course. So now what we're going to use is the network command. The network command, as you'll see here in the help, tells this particular OSPF process to enable routing for a specific IP network. Now, a common mistake that's made when you're configuring OSPF is that many network administrators or network engineers think that I'm going to go in here and define network 172.16.1.1. And even though I may not have any interfaces on this router in that network, I'm just going to start advertising that network via OSPF. That is not what the network command does under the OSPF configuration. What this network command does is tell this OSPF process, take the network address and the wildcard mask, which we'll get to here in just a moment, and look at the IP address of all of the interfaces on the router that are currently in an up-up state. And if one or more of the interfaces that's specified in this network command matches the IP address on the interface, then enable OSPF processing for that interface and advertise the network or networks on that interface out to the rest of the OSPF domain. That's a really long and complicated discussion about exactly what this network command does. It'll be a lot clearer once we enter a few of these commands in and you see what effect they have in configuring OSPF. Now, in the core router, I'm going to cheat. You can actually go in here and say network 0.0.0.0 with a wildcard mask of 0.0.0.0 and put it in area 0, for example. You'll recall from our discussion of OSPF that every OSPF implementation must have at least an area 0. It's the backbone area. And if I hit enter on this network command, it would take every network that's configured on this router and advertise it into OSPF. I hit enter there, it accepts the command, and so now we can go back out to the router and verify that we're advertising the networks we think we're advertising. We'll pick that up in the next video.